So what I'm going to share with you guys today is what I call the bridging the gap selling system. This is a system that I've developed over the last 5 years after selling over $6 million in the high ticket space. And by the end, you're going to be able to not only close deals more effectively, but also be able to lead your guys' teams more. Because one of the things I love about Zarar, Mo, Christian, one of the things that they teach at Launch My Agency is the CEO mindset, right? Being able to effectively lead a team. And that's sales. That's selling the vision. That's getting people on board. And so today, we're going to dive into this. So really, essentially, what I'm going to show you is a system of principles that if you apply, not only are you going to be able to sell your agency, but you're going to be able to sell your team. So I want to tell you guys a quick story on how I got into sales. Anybody familiar with The Wolf of Wall Street? Raise your hand. Has everybody seen The Wolf of Wall Street?
Good! Pick up the phone and start dialing.
It's my favorite movie. I could watch that movie on repeat over and over and over again. Now, when I was 17, right, this is probably the most, dopamine high movie on the planet. But at the end, the moral of the lesson I learned is that if you learn to sell, you can change your life. And so I was like, man, I got to try this sales thing. And so at the time, I had a fitness business online with my Instagram. And so I was DMing people. I was closing them over the DMs. I'd never gotten on the phone. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to test this phone sales thing. And so I said, send me your number and I'll give you a call. And so I get this guy's number off my Instagram. And sure enough, I'm on the phone and I'm just spitballing. I'm just selling. And at the end, I ended up closing him for $500. And that was the most money I'd ever made in a single day. And I did that in like an hour. And that completely shifted my perspective. And since then, I've been able to have, $50,000 days, $100,000 days, all because of this thing we call sales. Guys, I believe that sales can change everything for you, right? So for me, when I was just getting started in my career, right, we all kind of have ups and downs. And I remember there was a point where I had $32 in my bank account. This was in 2021, okay? I was kind of in a rocky spot with my business. And I had about 28 days to be able to make my rent, right? Make a couple $1,000s. And at the time, lead flow had slowed down. And that's one of the powerful things about learning marketing, which goes hand in hand with sales, is as I was able to join a sales team. Anybody familiar with Todd Brown, the marketer? Todd Brown, a couple people. So I ended up partnering with him. I became a high ticket closer. And my first month closing, I made $8,000. And I was like, this high ticket industry, because I was selling $500, $1,000 programs for fitness, I was like, there's something here. And so since then, I've been able to develop sales teams and different things like that. And so I'm going to share with you guys the principles that I've passed on to my salespeople, and I've been able to train over 100 plus reps to be able to go on and make 6 figures a year. So I'm going to give you a 3-step system. Like I said, the bridging the gap selling system that if you apply, your team's going to be able to close more deals. I've seen an increase. I've worked with pretty much every industry. Right now, I'm working with a plastic surgeon, right? They're selling literally plastic surgeries, right, for about $19,500. And with the same system that I'm applying, I just started working with them. We're going to double their close rate, okay? They're doing about 30%. They used to be at 60%, but they raised their prices. And so if you want to raise your prices, you're going to need to learn how to sell more effectively, because there's really 3 different types of categories when you're selling an offer. You've got the cheapest, you've got the best bang for your buck, and then you've got the most expensive. And if you want to move through these 3 different places, and I highly recommend playing with the most expensive, because to sell something for $1,000 or $10,000, typically, sometimes it's even easier to sell the $10,000 thing. Has anybody experienced this in their own business? By raising prices, it actually got easier to sell, right? Mo's been there. Anybody seen this guy online, Kino Body? Couple people. So he's a big fitness influencer online, and this is the guy that I partnered with, and I want to show you the numbers that I did with him. So in 12 months, I partnered with him. I built his entire sales team. We transformed 1,000 guys' lives. We got them into movie star shape, and we were able to generate $3.2 million in revenue, over $1 million in profit, while helping, create jobs for, about 25, 30 people. And so that's why I love sales, because not only does it make you money, but it changes people's lives. And I believe that selling is serving. If you really have a great product that you believe in, this is the byproduct. You can literally change people's lives, change people's situations. This is what gets me fired up. So this is my selling system. So there's really only 3 things that you need to master in sales. Number 1 is you have to master the mindset of selling, of closing, and persuading and influencing others. It's a mindset. I'm going to share with you guys exactly what you need to focus on when closing. Number 2 is you need to have a bulletproof script. The biggest mistake that I see when I work with sales teams is that I come in and their sales reps are all doing different things. If you don't have a repeatable system for your sales guys to close, then one day they're going to be closing 40%, the next day they're going to be closing 10, 15%. You're not going to know what's changed because they don't have a script, they don't have a formula. So I'm going to give you guys my formula. And then lastly, once you have the mindset and the script, sales doesn't work unless you work it. So you need a workflow. You need something that your people can plug into to consistently stay on track for hitting their projections. So let's talk about the mindset. First principle here is that selling is serving. Once you get this, selling becomes easy. See, I know a lot of people, anybody heard of call resistance, right? You're afraid to pick up the phone. You're like, man, I just don't want to pick. If you have call resistance, then you're selfish. You're focusing on yourself. You see, if you shift the perspective, even, in public speaking, they say public speaking is one of the most feared things by humans. And one of the easiest ways to get out of that is by shifting the perspective from yourself to the others. What's in it for them? How can this call change their life? And so that's where in service, you have to be convicted in what you're serving. And so the number one thing that I would recommend to you as a business owner and to your salespeople is to make sure that you take the time to review client wins every single day. I'm going to give you some actionable things you can plug into. Number one is review wins with your team every single day on your sales huddles, because conviction, I'll take a convicted salesperson over a skilled salesperson every single day. Every single day, I'll take a convicted salesperson over a skilled salesperson because that person actually believes will go the extra distance for the product or service that they're bought into. And so that's when it comes to you as the business owner selling the vision of why you guys are doing what you're doing, what the purpose, the mission is, right? And as agency owners, you guys are actually having a multiple impact, meaning you work with businesses and then you change that business and those businesses change other people's lives. So you guys are able to work with multiple businesses and have a exponential impact in the lives of your clients, which is really, really cool to actually see play out. Now, one of the things I want to talk about is that the most convinced, the most convicted person in sales will always influence the less certain person, right? Sales is a transfer of emotion, they say, but I say sales is a transfer of certainty, right? You're learning how to become certain in what you're doing, certain in your process. And a lot of times, sales reps will say, you got to fake it till you make it, right? You got to fake it till you make it. Well, it's partially true, but the reality is if you just show up as the best authentic version of yourself, you don't have to fake anything. You can just show up as your authentic version of yourself and play it all out. And if you get really good at learning word tracks and being able to handle different objections, then if someone asks you something you don't know, which is a question I got from one of my students the other day, then you just answer honestly. You're able to navigate that and spin it and flip the script. So a couple mindsets for you, right? If you want to close more deals, get more convicted, increase your conviction. The second thing is get more clear on your target. So a lot of times salespeople, when they start to get a good stride, they become lazy, right? They become lazy. They stop filling out their end of day reports. It's the pattern, right? They've gotten their fill. Well, the problem is they've lost clarity on their goals and their vision, right? They've actually filled the vision they had for themselves. It's your job as a leader to expand their vision, right? And if you don't sell them the next vision, the next step, then they're going to constantly hit a cap and then go back down, hit a cap and go back down. They're going to be on this hamster wheel, and the same thing goes for our lives because we will only get out of our lives what we feel like we deserve. So that's where you need to start selling a very clear vision of where they can be in your company, right? And I laid out a very clear 4-step process in my company, and that's what kept people so hungry to jump through the hoops and get to the next level. When I was running the fitness company, the first place that people would start is as a setter, sometimes even a DM setter. So they'd start as a setter, and then if they hit certain targets, certain KPIs, then eventually, then they could move up to a closer. And if they moved up to a closer and they became a leader and they were able to impact the people behind them, right? If they were able to start to become a leader and impact the setters on what they learned when they were there, then they could prove that they could be a sales leader. That's the third evolution for salespeople, is then leading and transferring and duplicating these skills. And if they stay there long enough, then maybe eventually, I've seen this progression through friends that have worked for some of the biggest guys in the industry, like, Cole Gordon, some of the guys that work there, they went from setter to closer to sales leader, and then lastly, partner or potentially a joint venture, right? Where if you want to start another sector of your business, they've proven in your business that they've been able to produce consistently, then you can put them into their own little entrepreneurship vehicle and they can start to excel. But if you don't do that, they're either going to constantly just go up and down in their performance or they're going to leave. And that's the last thing you want to do, because training sales reps is not only time consuming, but it's expensive, because every single deal that they mess up is going to cost you whatever your price of your program is, right? When I was training salespeople, I was like, I can't believe how much money I'm leaving on the table, because instead of having trained salespeople coming in, I'm having to literally train them on the job or burning leads, just burning cash. It's literally like just putting a pile of cash right here and lighting it on fire, right? And so hopefully by the end of this, you guys can take some of these principles and build a sales playbook, right? This is what I do when I do consulting with clients, is I help them put a playbook together so that they could take pretty much anybody off the street that's got decent sales experience or doesn't even have to have sales experience, and you can train them up from the ground up and ramp them up within 2 weeks. That's what we did, and that's a very valuable asset. And if you want to create a sellable company, the playbook is the key to that. So one of the things that I love to kind of do with my sales guys is, anybody heard of Grant Cardone? You guys familiar with Grant Cardone? Pretty much everybody, right? I was just at his 10X Growth Con, and one of the things he's very famous for saying is, who's got my money? Right? Who's got my money? And it's such a great mindset. I call it the modern day hunter, because as humans, right, thousands of years ago, we didn't really have the societies that we've built up, the civilizations. We would be in little tribes and we'd have to go out and we'd have to hunt, we'd have to kill to be able to eat and survive. And that's hardwired into our DNA, is this modern day hunter mentality. And so if you can channel into that and shift it from, literally actually killing animals to who's got my money, then that's when it can click for them. And then that's when people become very efficient. Because I've had sales guys come to me and they're like, dude, I'm making 200 dials a day. I'm hitting the list. No one is closing. No one's picking up. I'm not getting the money. And the problem is that they're not looking where the money is, right? They're not working smart. They're working hard. You have to work smart first so you have leverage, and then you can work hard. So you got to ask yourself, who's got my money? Who's ready to go? Where are the hottest leads? And you want to start to hit those first. Right? It's common sense, but common sense is no longer common, unfortunately. Okay, well, let's keep moving. So the Bridging the Gap sales framework, this is something I put together because my name is Bridger, right? So I was like, you know what? How can I play out, always play off of your strengths, right? So Bridging the Gap, okay? I think it's pretty logical to explain sales that way, right? A prospect comes to you, they're in their current situation. Their current situation, right? They've got pain, they've got doubts about getting to the next level. They might have financial struggles. They want to excel in their finances. They've got all these different things they're going to have to help them overcome to get them to the promised land, the dream outcome, the goals, the desires, the things that you're helping them get to, right? Because all sales is helping people helping people change. And it's hard to do as humans because we just want to keep doing the thing that we're doing and we don't want to change. It's easier to just stay where we're at. A lot of people, the problem why they can't close is because the distance between where they are and where they want to be is like this. There's no gap. You can't close someone with no gap because they're already there. They don't have a reason to move, right? They don't have a reason to change. So what your job is to drive a wedge in between where they are, where they want to be, and expand those two planes. You want to drive where they are as far left, amplify the pain, right? In marketing, right? You want to find the pain, you want to exaggerate it, amplify it. So you want to amplify that. And then you want to amplify their dream desires. And if you can widen the gap between where they are and where they want to be, and you can make them feel like if they stay where they're at, their life's going to be exponentially worse than it is now. And you can make them feel that if they get to here, it's going to be the best thing that could possibly happen to them. Then you just sell the bridge to get them from where they are to where they want to be, right? And that's the Bridging the Gap sales framework. Now, when I build a script, I like to think about what are all the possible things that a prospect is going to say at the end after I go through the pitch and I drop the price. And how can I avoid those? How can I overcome those? How can I get the prospect to already go there in their mind, ask a question to get them, the prospect, to overcome the objection for themselves? If you can get the prospect, it's almost like Inception. Anybody seen the movie Inception? Such a good movie. I watched it the other night. If you can plant, right, all the different ideas about why the time is now, why your product is the program for them, and why ultimately they need it now, then when you get to the end, it's just about logistically figuring it out because emotionally they've already been moved, right? People buy with emotion, justify off logic. There's 5 things I want to give you, 5 things that you have to have in the discovery part of your script, which is what we're talking about here. So in the discovery, there's 5 buying pillars that if you don't cover, you're going to end up running into these at the end, and it's going to create objections and stalls, and you might miss out. You're going to miss out on a lot of deals, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars, millions over the course of your career. So the first one is the gap. A lot of salespeople don't even know what the gap is, and once you educate them, it clicks for them like, oh wow, I need to figure out why they don't like where they're at, why they want to get to the next level, how it'll impact them when they get there, and what's been stopping them from getting there, all the obstacles, challenges, roadblocks, and that's the gap, what I just explained. So that's number 1. The second thing is having a prospect that's financially qualified. So important. I can't tell you how many new beginner salespeople spent 30, 40 minutes, an hour, hour and a half with prospects. At the end, find out are completely unqualified. They just wasted all of their time, and now they're literally just banging their head against the wall, being like, man, do I have to go do this again? They're almost hesitant. It's almost like they've gotten burned. They touched the fire, they've gotten burned. Now they almost don't want to go through the process again, and they've lost a little bit of confidence, certainty in themselves. And so the way you can avoid this is by being very strategic with asking financial qualifying questions within the first 5 to 10 minutes of the call. So important. Or if you can, have a setter pre-qualify and make sure that they're qualified when they hand them to your closers, your best sales guys, so that they're getting the cream of the crop. If you're selling B2B, it's very easy, right? How many leads do you have right now? What are you guys doing a month in revenue, right? You're asking these questions because you're a marketing agency hoping to grow their business, right? You can tell just by where they're at with the lead flow, with the amount of revenue they have, amount of clients they're bringing in, if they're typically going to be financially qualified. Now, you might have to get more into the specifics if you're finding that people have a lot of revenue, but they don't have a lot of profit. You can ask what their profitability numbers are, because you can also use that as leverage to close them. Wow, your profitability's there. What if we were able to get more out of the leads you currently have and you close more, your profitability's higher, right? When I'm doing B2C sales, right, business to consumer, I typically ask them, right, a lot of like biz op, right, helping them get out of a 9 to 5 and get into a new opportunity. What I'll do is I'll just ask them, what are you making in your job right now? Okay, and what do you want to make, right? And so then it's very, very simple to just help them say, okay, you're making 5K, you want to get to 10K. How long have you been making 5K? Okay, when's the next raise you're going to get? Oh, in a year? Okay, you're not going to get there. So you need a new vehicle. So then they've realized that in their head, and now I can start to sell them on the new idea, the new opportunity. Because people don't typically buy improvement offers, right? In marketing, they say it's very hard to sell improvement offers. It's much easier to sell new opportunities, right? It's much easier to sell new opportunities. And that's because as humans, we like to think that, if we try something new, maybe we'll get a different result. And so that's why people do that. Now, that's the second is finances. The third thing you want to make sure is all the decision makers are on the call. This is horrible. This is one of the most frustrating objections I've gone through with B2B. I've gone through with B2C, right? You get to the end, you're so excited, the prospect's on board, the money makes sense, they're ready to go. Let me just call up my business partner. I got to talk to my business partner. Let me run over the numbers. Now you got to go through the whole thing again, right? It's a pain in the butt. Just check at the beginning. Before we get started, is there anybody else that's going to be involved in a build out like this, in a marketing build out like this, that's going to be important, if we decide to really make some big changes here, right? Do you have a marketing director? Do you have a business partner? Getting those questions out at the beginning saves you a ton of time and energy. Very, very important. Now, the fourth one is trust, okay? How much trust have they built with your company? How much marketing material have they consumed? How long have they been following you online? What have they gone through so far, right, in your process? Because it's very difficult nowadays to, if someone hasn't been through enough material, to just hard close them. And even if you do hard close them, right, they're super skeptical. I don't really know you. You don't know me, right? You might end up getting what we call, a chargeback or cold feet, right? Where at the end of the sale, a couple days later, they have buyer's remorse. How you can avoid that is by controlling on the marketing side how much material they go through. That's why I love what Zarar, Mo, Christian teach to launch my agency, because they have such a good nurturing process so that by the time they get on the sales call, boom, they're ready to go. I've heard these guys' calls, they're really good at the marketing side. And that's super important, is having that trust built. And you can ask and you can test for that. You can ask and test for that at the beginning by simply asking them a couple questions. How long have you been following us, right? What made you decide to fill out the form, the questionnaire, right? What do you like? What do you resonate most about what we do here, right? How long have you been in the market looking for a solution? Are you looking at anybody else, competitors, etc., right? Getting that information at the beginning so when you get to the end, you're not wasting your time. Now, the last and final pillar that if you have, you're going to be set up to absolutely have a home run. I've had plenty of deals that I've closed where I didn't have any objections. I had to just lay down. I just had to figure out the finances, either piff them or put a payment plan together, and boom, they're ready to go because I hit all 5 of these buying pillars in the discovery. So the 5th one is timing/urgency. Timing/urgency. This is so important because even if they feel like, I'm not where I want to be, this is where I want to be, but I just don't think it's the right time. Now you've got to follow up a couple months, right? I'm going on vacation. So you need to ask them different life decisions. Hey, do you have, what's going on in your business and your life right now? Maybe they've got a huge payment they've got to make in their business. They can't afford, to move forward on stuff. I've had people that in fitness tell me they've got a surgery. They've got all these different issues that could pop up. So if you can just overcome that, now you're saving your sales guys time with someone who's not ready to go, right? So those are the 5 buying pillars that I think are so important to have in a script. Bridging the gap workflow. Guys, most important thing that I've seen with salespeople is giving them a clear plan of attack at the beginning of the week. Number 1, sales projections. What's their target? What are they expected to hit? What's their quota? Same thing goes for you as a business owner, right? If you're the one doing all the sales, then you should be setting projections every single week for yourself for the whole week so that they've got a quota at the end of the week and holding them accountable every single day to that. So beginning of week planning, here's your quotas, here's your targets. How are you going to hit those? Scheduling out your time. Another really good thing that I did is actually time audit. If you want to know what your sales guys are actually up to, or even yourself, do a time audit. Every 15 minutes, stop. It's super tedious, super annoying, but it's so valuable. One of the most valuable things you can do for yourself as a business owner or a salesperson is every 15 minutes, write down what you're doing during your workday. Not only are you going to discover all the places you're wasting time and not getting the most out of your day, but you're also going to discover what your magic time is. This is usually 2 to 3 hours throughout the entire day where you're going to get 2 to 3 times as much done as a business owner. Being able to learn how to tap into your magic time and really do your deep work during that time is incredible. In fact, I'm going to give you guys a book recommendation that's going to help you guys figure that out based on your chronotype. Your chronotype is when you're most likely to have the best sleep and wake schedule. It's based on your time, your circadian rhythm. It's called The Power of When. Such a powerful book. It's by the author, Dr. Michael Bruce. They call him the Sleep Doctor. Great book, and it talks about 4 different chronotypes that you can organize and schedule your day to get the most out of your day. And this is really good for sales guys as well, scheduling when they should be making calls. So, a couple things. I really do think that if you set a specific time frame for a task, it's going to help you condense the amount of time that you spend on that task because, I think it's Murphy's Law. Your time will expand to fill the time allotted to complete the task. So by simply compressing time frames, applying pressure, you can really excel and you can grow. Now, focusing on the highest money-making activities as a sales rep, we talked about this earlier, right? Working smarter, not harder. Just helping your sales guys become aware of where's the money, right? Where's the warmest, hottest leads, and how can we get those leads closed first, get the cream off the top, then work your way down. It's going to make you a lot of money. Okay, let's keep going. So to cover what we just went over, number 1, we went over my bridging the gap mindset, the modern day hunter mentality, right? Focusing on working smarter, not harder, right? Being able to elevate your identity, create conviction and clarity in your closers. And then number 2, setting up your sales script and your framework so that your sales guys are consistently following a process to close is going to set you up for success. And then lastly, making sure they have a consistent workflow to follow through on the work. You do these 3 things, I promise you, you're going to close more deals, you're going to make more money, and you're going to be on track for hitting your targets. All right. Well, thank you guys.